We're down at the 18 footers at Double Bay. We're doing a series of interviews with major sailors around the world. And one of the top 18 foot sailors, which we've known for a lot of years, who used to sail on the top rating Channel 7 boat, is Andrew Buckland. Andrew does the voiceovers and the commentary on the 18 footers now. But he's got a new project, so we just thought we'd find out what he's been doing in the past, let him tell us what he's been doing and what his background is, and then we'll talk about this new project.
Good, Geoff, good.
Mate, good to see you at last. Haven't seen you for ages.
Indeed.
What have you been up to?
Well, you know, it's been a funny old life a bit, and I kind of escaped from the marine industry for a while and went and did a MBA and went and worked in banking and finance, ran a venture capital fund for a while. But here I am, a bit older and no wiser, and back to sailing. How's that?
Mate, I think we all the sailors do. We gravitate back this way, don't we? I've done the same. I did my corporate business, and now look at me. I'm running a media business for them.
Exactly.
Sport.
But you know, for fun, I sail historic 18s now with some boys over at the Sydney Flying Squadron, and a fairly successful boat. Harold Cudmore comes and steers, called Yendes.
Yeah.
As we did say, it's got a square bow and 9 halyards. Who would have thought it could win a race? But it does. And we have enjoyed pretty good racing, you know, mostly against John Winning and his crew in the Aberdare, and that's all quite a lot of fun. But I've been also working on, you know, IRC keelboats and those sorts of things.
IRC keelboats?
Yeah, so I've sailed with, you know, Tony Levitt and Peter Sorensen, and you know, I've done the last several Hobarts. I've probably up into my 20-something Hobarts now, Geoff, so, you know, but I did a lot of work with Sorrow in particular. You know, I'd sailed a couple of years, you know, in 18 with him as well. We won the Gildan twice in the Tia Maria. And we've been pretty successful in the IRC fleet, in a, you know, in a sort of mid-sized 36-footer sort of thing.
Is that secret men's business?
No, there was a succession of boats, Philosopher's Club.
Philosopher's, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and he's just moved on a bit from that now, but that's been pretty good fun and pretty good racing, and it seems to have faded a bit, you know, from a participation standpoint right now. And the 36-40-footer size has kind of shrunk a bit, it seems. So, but still gets a good roll up at Hamilton and Ely. So we'll see. But I suppose the Foiler project is perhaps it's the next thing, and I don't see much point in, you know, anybody building any more conventional keelboats, if you want to use those words.
Dear idea, that's a big call.
It is a big call. But what you're seeing now, Geoff, and I'm sure you've heard whispers, but you know, people really struggling to get crew for the conventional keelboat. So club numbers tend to be down. The most popular racing now here in Sydney is, you know, twilight racing and winter racing, where the time commitment's pretty short.
Sure.
And you know, there's a bit of a dividing line, isn't it, between, you know, a reasonably good budget, professionally managed, you know, boats that race offshore, and then there's quite a big gap to the you know, general club racer and you know, inshore on a Saturday afternoon. Anyway, so, but pretty clearly, you know, the advent of foiling and the you know, development of that technology is going to change ocean racing and all sailing as we know it, as it already has in some degree. So it's a bit like when we started sailing planing boats in the ocean, which is probably now 50 years ago, more or less. So 1977, the first boats that would actually plane rather than surf. And, you know, obviously they were greeted with surprise by many people, but the foiling boat is one of those rare things a bit where the benefits are very significant, arising from the increase in riding moment, also from the foil. So the foil does two things: it lifts the boat and it increases riding moment. The faster the boat goes, the more riding moment it gets. And that effect's pretty dynamic. And so it's a bit of an unusual situation. Obviously the development of the foil efficiency, and helped by, first of all, the growth in moss and catamarans, AC catamarans and now, you know, American Cup monohull. You know, that technology is now pretty well known, and the drag numbers for the foils are surprisingly low.
Yes, and of course, you know, now they've got different foils for different, you know, wind speeds and whatever. You know, your package of foils is huge. You know, they go from angles, etc.
Well, as you would expect, because you know the efficient size, just like the sail, you know, the efficient size sail, the faster you go, the smaller the foil. So,
yeah,
you know, you've got a, and okay, for an ocean racing boat, obviously you're not going to do that. So you've got one foil which you're trying to, you know, you're trying to configure across a range of speed, maybe from 15 to 30 knots as your focus, obviously. So, whereas maybe a certain degree, a moth, for example, they're trying to get on foils at about 5 knots.
Sure.
And they have it, significant adjustability. But the keelboat, ocean racing keelboat, slightly different proposition, obviously.
Well, Beneteau are just starting their Figaro 3 campaigns.
Yep.
And there's a lot of the French, there's half a dozen boats now.
Yes.
Got a regatta thing, and there's 24 Amokas in this year's Fastnet race.
Yeah.
So
there it is. The future is already here.
Yeah, well and truly.
Yeah. But see, the Amoka's an interesting case. Not allowed a rudder foil, so it doesn't. Whilst the foil does provide 100% of the displacement in lift, the boat still sits on the water. And I guess this proposal that we've got is with a small rudder foil, so the boat doesn't sit on the water as such anymore. It still doesn't have to foil high like a moth. It can foil quite low and be pretty safe and satisfactory. But there's a fair bit of residual drag in the Amoka model from just the hull interference, even though it's not displacing, hardly anything at all. We'd say, might be displacing less than 1/10 of its mass when it's roaring along, but a fair bit of induced drag from just the water, wetted surface drag on the hull.
The ocean race just announced that they're practically full as far as the number of Mokas for the next 2021 race.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of interest in those things at the moment.
Well, I mean, who would have thought that we could go, 500 miles in a day without too much stress? That's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and the Amoka's a complex bit of kit. The way it's configured for single-handed is really very complex.
Yeah.
And take your hat off to them, for A, getting them to work and being able to be managed by one guy, and B, staying in one piece for 60 days at 30 knots, more or less. Well,
they had a little bit of a problem this year, didn't they, with the route to run?
Yeah.
They didn't quite actually stay together.
No, and the timing's a bit wrong, isn't it? Like going out into a low pressure cell in the Bay of Biscay, what could go wrong?
Well, it's always like that in the Bay of Biscay, isn't it, for the Vendée?
Yeah.
And of course, Alex didn't help things either by running into Guadeloupe.
Well, that's the whole problem, isn't it? You've got to sleep sometimes. And his alarm didn't go. Okay, bad.
So tell us about the Bucko 04.
Well, V4, 04. I mean, I've been working on it for a while with, a little group. Freddie Barrett's the design principal. And, the question I put to him initially was, Freddie, what's the cheapest boat we can build that will foil that can go Cat 1? And of course that got a good laugh from Fred. And after a bit of humming and hawing and a bit of toing and froing, we started at, 46 feet. And I guess after we went around the mulberry bush a few times, he said, maybe you should just make it a little bit longer, it'll be a bit easier. Okay. So it's now a 50-footer. But it's light, it's below 5,000 kilos light ship, so full IRC displacement with crew and fuel and water and raft and all that stuff, around 6,000 kilos. So it's pretty light.
Yeah, well and truly.
Yeah. And
how many crew?
Just 7 or 8, yeah.
7 or 8.
Electric winches. Yeah. And, Furley sails. I'm not getting out of the cockpit too much. So, yeah. And, it looks like you've shrunk Chiral to some degree, but if you crossed Chiral with a TP52, you'd get our boat, you know, a shrunken version. And the foils are, you know, a fairly serious bit of effort. Obviously, the rudder foil lifts about between 10 and 15% of the displacement, so it's lifting, you know, something like 750 kilos, and the rest on the primary foil. So the primary foil span outside of the chine, outside of the gunnel, would be about 3 metres. So that, and the thing I discussed earlier about the riding moment increasing as the speed goes up, you know, the centre of buoyancy moves to a point about, you know, 1.8 metres perhaps outside the chine. So to make the point, you know, the half beam of the boat's 2.4, let's say it's a minimum of 1.6, it moves outboard. Then you've got 4 metres of riding arm to the centre line, plus the canning keel. And to make the point that the equivalent number on a TP52 is about, probably a bit under 2 metres. So probably about actually 2 metres in fact, without a canning keel.
Sure.
So we're lighter, the canning keel makes up for that, but the increased lever arm. So you end up with 180, 200% of the riding moment of a TP in certain situations. And that riding moment increases, so at 10 knots it's, you know, the boat, half the boat more or less is getting lifted out, and at 15 knots more or less the whole boat's getting lifted out and living on that, you know, widely separated foil. That's where the RM comes from.
So what about the authorities? Do they like this sort of boat?
Well, it's accepted as inevitable, you know, that's just the same rules apply, but obviously has to pass the construction standard, which in fact to stay in one piece at 35 knots, it probably has to exceed the construction standard in certain respects, and just pass the self-riding test, which for canning boats is a little bit more stringent than it is for non-canning boats. So, you know, the actually organising authority of the Sydney-Hpbart Race has confirmed that that's the requirement. There's no special requirement, but, and I suppose take the point that whilst its dynamic sailing performance depends on foiling, it's got to pass the static self-riding test, the same test as any other boat, and the construction scanning test. So, you know, there's no additional risk, except to the extent that it will go a bit faster, but it'll just go a bit faster, a bit easier, and in some respects that might be safer, perhaps, and a boat built with that in mind might be safer, you know. The complaints from the TP guys primarily about being wet, you know, with no protection and so on, and this boat's designed not so dependent on crew weight on the rail. Hopefully, you know, not to bow down and through the waves approach of the TP52, and the dangerous part for those boats is exactly that, just water over the deck.
Yeah, indeed.
So we would hope to get rid of that particular risk, and with it, you know, a cabin that looks a bit like we stole it off a Remoka 60. Something to hide behind a bit. Yeah.
But it looks like Nicholas entered fast 40 at the front.
Yeah.
The cabin of a Remoka.
Yeah.
And the back end of a pavement.
Well, we've done some good research, okay. Yeah.
So how far down the track are you with this project?
Well, obviously we put our hand up pretty hard right now because we're only about, you know, 1.99 million short of cash.
Oh, that's not a lot.
Not at all.
No, get that in a week.
Get that in a week, exactly. So we've been talking to a range of people, but offshore and here, but deadline's coming up, so we put the flag up and said, but it may be that, you know, in a couple of weeks, you know, we might have secured the funding. We've certainly got some viable discussions on the topic going on as we speak.
So, Bucko, overseas interest or local?
Well, Geoff, as you'd expect, a bit of each. We've got a reasonable network of people acting as intermediaries in various places, but I guess a project of this nature, we probably expected that the money would come from somebody that already had some knowledge of us and some level of trust existing, so that's how it's shaping up. leading contenders. There's some considerable local interest from people who've already been involved at the Hobart race sort of level, and some offshore interest. Which is probably a bit of a longer run game, but people that are involved in significant property stuff in China and see Australia, Sydney-Hpbart Race, the whole thing has been pretty attractive and a bit of a learning experience perhaps.
Budget?
Well, we stuck our hand up for 2 and a bit million AUD or 2 million in USD. If you've got some of that lying around, that'd be good. I guess, as I alluded to before, it's probably the same cost as about 8 sales for a 100-footer. Our whole budget is, a bit less than the sale budget for a 100-footer. So, but if you wanted to compare, I could sell you a 100-foot foiler, but we'd have to quote you about 27 million Australian.
Oh dear. Well, once the Beneteaus and the Imokas, etc., started to hit heavy like they are right at this moment, as I said, there's 24 in this year's Fastnet race. Somebody had to come up with the 100-footer.
Well, it's interesting. The Imoka guys tell us that they run their velocity prediction stuff for last year's Hobart race, and they said an Imoka, as presently existing, would have beaten the hundreds to Hobart. And that's strictly a byproduct of foiling, of course. Even though they're not fully foiling, they're substantially foil stabilised and foil assisted in a displacement sense. But
sure.
No rudder foil, so it can't lift out fully. But so they suggested to us that at least Sydney Heads to Tasman Island time of 24 hours would have been feasible.
In a 50-footer?
In a 60, in a Mocha boat.
In a Mocha.
As they presently are, yeah.
So in your boat, what's that?
Well, it's a 50-footer with a rudder full, so, it's tricky, but it's probably about the same speed as an Mocha boat.
I was going to say, once you get up there, it's...
Yeah. And, we're working away on the modelling and in light air, the things at that weight are constrained by the apparent wind angle, really. So in 10 knots of wind, 12 knots of wind, the apparent wind gets a long way forward because the boat goes pretty fast. And then as the wind speed goes up, that changes around. But I guess, say in 25 knots, we're looking at 1.3 times the wind speed, so 32 or something, a number a bit like that, 32 and 25. And that's broadly comparable with a 100-footer. So.
Well, sailing below 40, so you get a few big gales down that way. How do you?
I wouldn't know anything about that at all.
Well, we've had some problems in the race.
Really?
Years. Yeah,
really?
Indeed, yeah.
Well, Geoff, I can tell you that my first 3 long ocean races are what's called the relevant experience. The 77 Hobart, where we had 3 culprits. The 79 Farset of ill repute. And I also managed to get included in the 93 race and the 98 race. So I've seen a little bit of wind and some waves.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Right, okay.
It's okay.
How do you reckon your boat will go on that?
Well, I think that as ever, we race the boats up to 40 knots of wind, and after 40 knots you just try and stay in one piece. This boat probably pretty good, just 60-degree true wind angle, probably pretty comfy, I would say. So probably not too bad at all. Got some nice small sails to go with that. Could have quite a nice day.
It's marvellous the way the foiling's going, is that people are now thinking that how we start our children off in sailing, we go into opties and then 420s and 470s and whatever, etc., etc. When they get up to around about 16 as they're progressing, that's when we seem to lose them. And they're saying that foiling brings the excitement to the kids. And we're hoping to keep the children in the sport.
Well,
for longer these days.
it's a bit of a tricky problem. I mean, you know, you do have to blame, you know, the Olympic authorities to some degree because, you know, the Olympic classes, except for the 49er, are really, you know, not particularly exciting as such. You know, watch the years of the 470 in this century. I mean, it's a 1950-60 design, if my memory serves me correctly. So, but on the other hand, you know, sailing a moth on foils is actually technically quite difficult, and that's a good thing. The moth itself, a pretty expensive bit of kit, as you know. So, somewhere in the middle ground, and you see that the guys who managed to keep the Cherubs alive and the 16s and 16s alive, both pretty good medium performance boats. It's a bit of a mystery as to how the sport will evolve, but I guess you'd think, and it's not happening right now, but you'd think that there will be a foiling boat in the Olympic Games at some point soon, and that might become more attractive again. But at the moment, a lot of money, a lot of effort is being spent on racing some pretty old designs that aren't much fun for the kids. So I just hope there's some evolution in it.
Indeed. So, getting back to the local scene, how's the 18s going?
Well, you would have seen, I think, the coverage of this year's, from the camera cut this year here, for Gilman. It's at a bit of a crossroads, I think, in some respects. Same problem a bit. The class is good, the pitches are nice, but the average age of the guy sailing is going up, not down.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah,
and I'm not sure.
And the Kiwis took the JJ from you.
I'm not sure yet. And you know, the Kiwis have now won that twice in a row, and you know, the two best Kiwi boats were definitely better than all of our boats.
Is that rig design?
No, it's just more training, better training, younger blokes. You know, Honda Marine, you know, won pretty convincingly, and they'd done a lot of work technically. That was easy to see. But if you watch them and ACC sail, you know, they're pretty exact. You know, the ley lines were all spot on, or more or less spot on. You know, their execution on the corners was better. Yeah. It's hard to, you know, and that's a lot of practice to go from sort of, you know, our guys that I know, you know, for example, winning appliances, they hadn't sailed with the same crew in the boat for more than half a dozen times. And you can't expect to get the level of cohesion and consistent decision making without having done, I don't know, mate, 30, 40, 50 outings, one might say, you know, even however good the guys are, you know, and they're very good sailors, but the cohesion between the three people and allocating the responsibilities and getting it so the execution's good and the communication's simple and you know, minimal, you know, doesn't happen in you know, even in 1 week of practicing, I don't think.
So is the fleet building, or is it static? Or?
Well, I think the fleet number's more or less static here. Obviously the Kiwis are maintaining just enough boats. I mean, you know, I only got 6 or 8 boats. Fleet here, 20 boats more or less. And 20 boats is enough of a handful in the harbour itself at any event, you know, with the increased crowding. So I don't think it needs, you know, back a long time ago, mate, you know, the 1979 World Championship, we had 39 boats on the start line. You don't need 39, because then the start line gets pretty long, and I said, yeah, but it hasn't gotten any bigger, it's gotten smaller effectively, you know, more power boats and certainly more ferries. So I think 20 boats is fine, that's not the problem. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of boats.
Well, mate, it's been good talking to you. The Bucko 04 is quite an interesting project.
Well, you don't want to dive boredom, do you?
It's It's interesting that you launched it at this time of the year.
Well, we've been fiddling for a year, so it's about time, you know.
I say, well, you've got to get it organised to get into the Hobart race. You've got to build a damn thing.
Well, we got a 6-month build window, so that's all right. You know.
Yeah.
It's not a big boat. It's not absurdly complex, you know, but there'll be issues. So we've got 6 months to build it and 2 months to practice. You know. That sounds about right, doesn't it?
Sounds like a program to me.
Yeah. And you know, the assumption being that it's a professionally organised outfit, and we do have 2 months of practice. You know, we're not relying on going out on the weekend. Relying on going for a sail whenever we need to go for a sail, which is pretty important.
If anybody who's watching this sees the need to get in touch with you,
well, you can find all those details on the press release that went out. So that's available on the web, on a number of websites, including Sailing Atlantic. It's got a phone number and an email address. And I reckon if you rang any sail off from Australia, somebody would tell you what my phone number was. How's that?
do you have a sail loft tied in at this stage?
No, I've been working fairly closely with the door guys here, Chris Nicholson or Shane Ganari, depending on what's going on. And that's, you know, the advancement of that part of it is considerable, and you know, but equally, that's sort of quite low on the list of concerns in a sense. That's a known deliverable, and it'll turn up and it will be 98% correct. Our focus is not on that. Our focus is on, you know, the other operating issues about foil deployment and all that sort of stuff. Rudder rake, foil rake, but we do. So we're sort of, and because it's a 50-footer, there's been millions of dollars spent on refining, you know, various things for the TP class in particular. We'll be fine. You know, it's not a windward leeward boat. It's just a, you know, offshore passage race boat. A little bit different, but refining the, you know, the sail shakes to the nth degree is not where the emphasis is. The emphasis is on having the right amounts of, you know, the right wardrobe in terms of sail size. It doesn't really have any spinnakers or swimming upwind sails, because that's what it does. But having, you know, in the Hobart race, you're trying to cover the range from 0 to 50 knots, and so we've worked quite hard on that, how that, you know, best fits on the boat, and it's you know, inner forestays, all those sorts of things. But you know, the modelling, the performance modelling, obviously interesting journey in some of the sail force coefficients and things, and you know, the advances in the last 10 years in that field alone have been quite significant, and that also helps this sort of boat, a high performance boat, but we don't have to worry too much.
What about speeds? What are you predicting?
Well, we're sort of at the, you know, 1.3 times the wind speed sort of number. So in 20, you know, in 20 it might do 26.
30?
Well, I'll just go 1.3. What's that? You know, 30, 39. You know,
40.
and I don't think you can take your pedal off the metal.
I was going to say, yeah, you can do 1.3 at 40.
Well, no, because 1.3 at 40 is, there's going to be some water roughness, and I think about that. And equally, our foil, you know, we're not, I mean, the focus of our efforts certainly is on you know, the speed range up to about 30, 16 to 30. And if you can stay in one piece, once the wind speed gets over 25, that's the game. It's not, you know, pressing. Like for the guys that go around the world where, you know, they've got all day and all night and so on, and you know, they will do 30, you know, America 60, they'll sit on 30 with the autopilot. So
yeah, that's right, with the autopilot.
Got a slightly different proposition to that, obviously, but yeah. So if we said 30 and 23 knots of wind, how does that sound?
Yeah.
And then we're happy, okay? slow down a bit.
8, that's a bit quick.
Yeah.
For a
Well,
50
no,
foot boat.
I've been 30 knots in a keel over the ocean several times.
Yeah.
And nothing bad happened, you know.
What size was the boat?
Oh, I've been 30 knots in a 35 footer, a 40 footer, and an 80 footer. It's all right. You know, it's not like you're in a car, you can crash into something solid, or mostly that's the case anyway.
Well,
The
hopefully
water's
not,
a bit
no,
soft still at that speed. Yeah.
Right, very good.
Very good, Geoff.
Been good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you. Catch up later.
If we can help you in any way, give us a yell.
Send money, son. Send money.
Send money. Well, we'll see if we can't send some people to you by after having a look at this.
Thank you.
All the best, buddy.
Cheers.